the very last thing that just happened is we covered how both parties went to the Wizard of Wines and then Yester Hill back to back, and various things that happened there. Even though for Alpha, actually, they left Yester Hill and came back like a couple of times. We just went ahead and covered everything there instead of the back and forth timeline.
Well, I did have one question about that I don't think we really covered, because we started talking about it in chat, but it never, but like, so the axe, there's an axe that we got there.
Yeah.
And I assume the other party also got there. First of all, it's an axe that's good against plant things,
yes.
and you get it right when you finish fighting all the plants. So
exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Really, really cool.
I agree.
Big, not a fan of that. Should be the opposite side of the weapons that you get. Whatever.
Well, you don't want to have the plant killing weapon handed to you directly before fighting all the plants. What you want is to fight a bunch of plants and then receive the plant killing weapon because of that, and then have that so that when later you fight more plants, you have the item that you receive, your plant killing expertise weapon.
If I'm being really technical, both parties did receive the plant killing weapon immediately before fighting all the plants. It was just too immediately, so nobody realized that black staff, if you were to break it would destroy every blight immediately. Including, by the way, tree blights are no exception to that. So
yeah.
Sundering the staff would have...
But then that raises a really big question of why the fuck is that in the game? That's stupid.
So that you can break a staff in a really awesome way and destroy Winter Splinter and be very cool.
I feel like we have a lot of area effect spells and light up the fire repeatedly.
Yeah, and that works too.
Anyway. But yeah, what is this about being pure of heart?
Oh yeah, if you wield it and you are not pure of heart, every time you hit with an attack, it deals 1 damage to you as thorns grow into your hand.
Oh, it's just 1. Oh, I thought that was a big deal.
Yeah. No, it's not a big deal. You guys are pussies.
Oh, I thought I remember thinking it wasn't that big a deal. I couldn't remember why I thought
Nobody used this axe even one time. Is why I didn't mention it. Everybody, both parties did the experimentation and went, ow, and like forgot about it forever.
Cinder did use it, actually. Cinder used it a few times.
Did she?
For some reason, she had to use it.
Interesting. Okay.
What did it do? What was its magical, like, what was its...
It's like Plant Bane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's no reason that we would ever have to use it after...
Yeah, not really. If you already have magical weapons and are overcoming the resistance of creatures who have such a thing. So, yeah, the prime experience is that they are successful with some split-second maneuvering at destroying the ritual effigy before Winter Splinter, the tree blight, can be birthed from it. Alpha loses not only their skeletal dog, but also their peregrine in their fight, and Short, a player character, they have a bit of a harder time, but they still suffer through it. This slide is because the very last thing we left off with is that after Prime finishes this year, they go back to the Wizard of Wines to rest, and during the night, Shava is paid a visit by a witch who says that she bears a message from the mother who dwells in a flooded town up a river, and that the mother wants to meet Shava and asks that she come there when she can, and then leaves. Because we have Duncan here, I want to spend some time talking about Peregrine and her next adventures, but I'll really quick talk first about what happens next in Prime, which is that they...
Well, I almost fall off a roof. There's one. That's one.
You do almost fall off a roof because the witch is like, come up on the roof and join me, and then you discover you're actually really, really bad at climbing onto roofs, and it's actually a near lethal request.
Give me a ride.
Yeah. So Prime goes back to Vallaki at this point. They are following up on having saved like the Mardikovs, basically. Davian Mardikov says, yeah, go talk to my son, and as we make our wine deliveries. When they arrive at Vallaki, I have a moment prepared because it has become clear at this point that Christy is not going to be able to continue to commit to this campaign. She has too many other things asking for her time. So we have already arranged this is going to be her last session. So when they return to Vallaki, they are met by somebody who is looking
Hey,
for
Alan.
Esmeralda in particular. Yes.
Just sorry to interrupt. I think Carter is in the wrong. I think he's waiting in the wrong like tabletop video, but I can't get a text to go through to tell him.
Oh.
It doesn't show that anybody's in there.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
doesn't.
I don't see him there.
Yeah.
Ooh, Ashley's
I don't know.
jumping in. Did you find him, Ashley?
I jumped in to see, and it was me, just me.
Okay.
Okay. He was in there just a second ago, and I tried to tell him to.
Oh, I see.
Gotcha.
Maybe he noticed.
Yeah, maybe
Well,
he'll
all right.
he'll join
Carry
us.
on. Sorry.
All right.
I'll try and find him.
We know that Chrissy's going to be leaving the campaign. Waiting for her is a character that Prime has never met before. He is a dusk elf wearing a sheepskin cloak, and he regales them with a bit of a story, a reason why he is crossing their paths now. They have already heard that recently the Carnival Master, half-elf Rictavio, was waylaid by the Vistani and the werewolves after escaping from Vallaki. He was taken prisoner by the Vistani and held in their camp. What they learned from this Dusk Elf now is that the Vistani, having captured this person and removed a hat of disguise, discovered that he is in fact an old man named Rudolf van Richten, a man that the Vistani actually know well and have a great grudge against. They hate this man. And it seems, from the backstory they give you, that the Vistani intended to, after some time, deliver him to Strahd. The Dusk Elves, who have been encamped for a long time encircling the Vistani and have been pretty familiar with them as neighbors, see that this is developing and have to make a decision. And ultimately, they decide, led by Casimir Velikov, that they are going to intervene on Van Richten's behalf. They liberate him from the Vistani. As they help him escape, he tells them where he is going. He says that he is going... well, actually, they advise him. Casimir tells him a place that might be helpful to you is this ancient place of knowledge and secrets deep in the mountains. If you're looking for a secret to defeat Strahd, it may be there. So they know that Van Richten is going in that direction. For their betrayal, the Dusk Elves have all been captured by the Vistani and locked down. According to this Dusk Elf, Rahadin, he is the only one who escaped and was told by Van Richten to seek out Esmeralda, because Van Richten knows Esmeralda is in Barovia, to find her and bring her to this place deep in the mountains, that it will be easier for the two of them to move quickly, because he says, no offense party, but I think we are the higher level characters, and we're looking for Van Richten in particular. So, and something I should say too, is that he actually asks for her to come aside so they can have this conversation privately, away from the rest of the party. The party only knows that this is the text of the conversation because Cinder is able, with her very good perception, to listen in and secretly become aware of what is passing between them. But they both try to keep it close to the chest because Esmeralda, it seems too, has some secrets around what she's doing, maybe doesn't fully trust the party with all of her side missions, and does seem interested in getting to Van Richten as soon as possible. So Rahadin says, we, the two of us, should follow Van Richten and go up Mount Gaucus together. And Esmeralda agrees to this. She says her goodbyes to the party. Rahadin summons a phantom steed skeletal horse once they're out of eyeshot of the party and says, oh, by the way, long ago an evil person cast a curse upon me that whenever you're within 10 feet of me, you can hear the screams of the dying all the time. Esmeralda goes, okay, and does still get on his horse with him, and they ride off together. And this is the last that we're going to see of them for a little while. So, moving from that back into Alpha, while the rest of the party on Yester Hill is figuring out their new loot, they have Kevin the Blood Spear, they have this axe, and they're trying to figure out what their next move forward is going to be. Peregrine is born on the back of Bucephalus to Castle Ravenloft. So here I am going to talk a little bit about Strahd and some of his objectives and motivations throughout this game. Strahd brings Peregrine to Castle Ravenloft, deep into his own personal quarters, and actually up into a guest room of her own, which he tells her this is for your use while you are here. In fact, you have free reign of the castle. I think you will be able to tell if you reach an area that is specifically off limits and dangerous, but otherwise, I have instructed my guardians not to harm you under any circumstances. As far as neutral things like traps, you'll have to fare for yourself when it comes to that. But this castle is yours to explore until midnight tonight, at which point I will return, and wherever you are, I will find you, and I will follow through on my ultimatum, which I'm presenting to you now. You need to decide whether or not you will join me as a follower, companion, like whatever you want to negotiate. If you do not accept, I will kill one member of your party. I'm not going to make a decision right now about who that is. You have some time to think about it. And Strahd leaves Peregrine here by herself. What's going on with Strahd, when he's doing things like this, when he is presenting vampire spawn for Prime to battle against, when he is giving Peregrine this choice, there's a few different reasons. One of them is boredom. Simply that he has spent so much time in this land, like very, very immediately proved to himself that he is the top dog here and isn't really going to be challenged, that he is playing cat and mouse with people. He wants new challengers to come into his realm so he can have the experience of the back and forth with them, whatever that might result in. He hopes to keep it as entertaining as possible for as long as possible. But he has some other reasons for doing this as well. So they list Strahd's goals in a whole section at the beginning of the book. The first one should come as no surprise. His first priority, almost all the time, is working toward making Irina Kolyana his bride. As we all know by now, Strahd believes that Irina Kolyana is the reborn soul of his lost love, Tatiana, whom he has already lost once before, and he does not intend to let her escape him again. He believes that she is his best chance at happiness in this immortal prison which he is forced to occupy. A secondary objective of his, greater than killing the player characters, he actually is going to be more antagonistic toward Esmeralda and Van Richten. He is aware that these two are vampire hunters who have come from an outside land to kill him, and he has a lot less control in that situation than he does over people whom he has fooled into coming into Barovia or invited purposefully. Esmeralda has been able to just walk in because she is a Vistani. She is under his blanket policy where they can come and go as they please. And Rudolf Van Richten smuggled himself in, knowing that this was Strahd's policy. He came in the company of a Vistani who was unaware of his true identity, and then dispatched him shortly thereafter. So Strahd has learned that Rudolf Van Richten is here as an extremely seasoned, experienced vampire hunter, and he will not hold back trying to put down this old man. But the final goal of his, which I don't know if he ever specifically, sincerely and calmly articulated in either of your games, is that he has come to develop this idea that he just hasn't really been able to let go of being the Dark Lord of Barovia until now, because he's the only one for the job. Like, what would happen to this land if it didn't have Strahd holding dominion over it? This place would lose something of its identity and its purpose. But he is getting tired of this role, and he's beginning to dream of, what if I could appoint somebody to be a successor to what I do here? What if I could somehow raise somebody else to my level? I have not known a peer. I almost feel like I never did while I was alive, and I certainly haven't since I became a vampire. What I want is to feel like I have somebody who I can talk to on equal footing, and who may even be able to outlast me. I don't think that he has, at this point, delusions of and then I will definitely be able to leave Barovia or destroy myself somehow. He's not at that point. I think because this is psychologically blocking him. He's not willing to let go of his legacy until he has some kind of feeling like it's going to be preserved in some way. And right now he doesn't feel like this is the case. So he could be negotiated into accepting somebody as a consort or a long-term companion. But mortal consorts bore him. He's going to want you to be immortal so you can keep up with him for a longer period of time. And so far, everybody he's turned into a bride has disappointed him as well. They've ended up locked in crypts deep below the castle after he loses interest in them. So he is looking for somebody who can keep him engaged and entertained. So when he dares Peregrine to join him or suffer an ally to be killed, it's partly just to see what she will do, just to create this open-ended situation where she has the chance to impress him. She has already impressed him by going straight for the throat with the ghost in the mirror, by asking it to kill him. What a way to be introduced to somebody who is newly arrived in your realm. So he wants to take the measure of her and assess and see, is this somebody worthy of further interactions with?
Hey,
Hello.
I feel like, did Sparky just blip really bad for anybody else? Or did I blip really bad?
I think Sparky cut off.
I thought Luke blipped really bad.
Oh, was that Luke? I don't know who it was.
Somebody spoke a syllable, and I don't know who it was.
It was not me. It was Luke.
Luke, can you try again? You are muted at this time. He might have just done that, though. Please feel free to interject if you get it working at any point. Oh, no.
I'm curious, how is that meant to, like, manifest? Or, like, I don't know, what's the end game there for find a worthy successor? Like, is that supposed to lead anywhere, or is he just, like, eventually gonna try to kill you? Or is that how it works? Like, that if by killing him, you know, is that his, like, ultimate test, or what?
Supposed to by, does the book lay out criteria, or does he have criteria, or...
I don't know.
Okay. Strahd has a number of criteria, which I think are this next slide.
Okay.
Yeah. So Strahd has certain values that he likes about himself, and he is impressed by people who reflect these values. These are, again, things that they give me in bullet points early in the book. He likes creatures not only who you could call charismatic, those who you would call arrogant. He just takes that as a kind of confidence. When you guys are shit-talking him, even though he clearly has the advantage, he actually does like that and is impressed by that. To some extent, it's clearly like, you know, trying to console yourself and steel yourself against something terrible, but that's better than the alternative, which is you really lose points with him if you fold. He wants to see that you will stand up even if you are afraid, and that you will, you know, bluster into places and believe in yourself. He is also
what does he think about people who pretend about working for him and pretend to want to be his best friend out loud?
That's another bullet point.
Like, do they work for me? Do I...
Yeah.
They said it so confidently. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah. He values toughness and endurance. Simply, if he can wail on you for a couple of rounds and you're still up, he was a soldier. He was a general. If you have that kind of training, he's going to respect it and relate to it in a very fundamental, kind of militaristic way. Speaking to Julie's question, he appreciates knowledge and cunning. If you are able to think fast and, you know, talk on your feet, as it were, and try to negotiate a situation to your advantage, he's going to be interested to see whether you can pull that off or not. He is purposefully bringing people into these dangerous positions because he wants to have this back and forth with them. He wants to experience them in this way. And the final one, which I've kind of touched on a bit with the first one, but to really circle home on it, is defiance. He is going to stack every odd against you that he can, and he has a lot to bring to his disposal. He really wants to see that you can run the full gamut of what he has to offer. So he's not interested in killing you quickly and coming and wiping you out with overwhelming force. He is more interested in if you can survive the despair, the long slog that is Barovia, that is the accumulation of despairs and doubts and thorns and twigs being pushed into your face and having to hide under a wagon in the mud from things. If you are able to come through that and still tell him to go fuck himself, then that's what he's here for. Because he has, by now, wiped out almost anybody in Barovia who would do that, and maybe to some extent he regrets that. So, while Peregrine is in Castle Ravenloft, he is trying to take a step back and not, just be watching her all the time, but he's going to be interested to follow in her footsteps later to see what she did, to see what kind of dangerous situations maybe she got into. Maybe he's hoping to hear that story from her. He's interested to see if she will keep their meeting that he has called for, be bold enough to face him face to face, or be clever enough to escape the castle somehow. So he's interested to see what comes of that.
Alan?
Yes.
My was Strahd's motivations. You had the three main ones you listed, and one of them wasn't even to not be cursed. Is it like he even an idea that is even possible? In his head?
No.
Was he aware that he was cursed?
No, Strahd is...
How could he not be, honestly?
Yeah, so this is something that I think we know well enough that I can speak to it. Strahd becomes a vampire because he goes to the Amber Temple and makes a cursed deal for knowledge. He has to use that knowledge. It is something that he has to do. Like, he purposefully has to follow through with a plan of action in order for this to happen. So he wholly accepts that his current position is a result of his own actions, except for one aspect of it. And they try to illustrate this in the Tome of Strahd. He resents the original fact of his own mortality. So in the Tome of Strahd, he makes a point of saying that the best years of his life were spent in war, that the war years and the killing years wore down his soul as wind wears a stone into sand. And by the time he met Tatiana, a beautiful enough woman that he felt like she could inspire him to enjoy life again, he was no longer a suitable match for her because the life he had lived had tainted him beyond anything that she could love. And instead she loves his younger brother Sergei, whom he imagines to be like, what if that was a version of myself that didn't have the older brother responsibilities, that didn't have the general and the prince responsibilities. So this is the original, in his opinion, like the tragic curse that circumstances turned him into a man who was not capable of having the things that he wanted. And because he was unable to make himself more younger or more beautiful, he chose instead to make himself more powerful because he saw that that was within his grasp. He committed more deeply into his own brutality, and even with that was unable to procure Tatiana for himself. So he regrets that, and he regrets the fact that he ever aged and became something terrible. But I think he sees being a vampire as like a decision that he had to make, and to some extent an inevitable outcome of, the only other choice was simply to die, to accept his age and die, which he didn't feel like he wanted to do, and I don't think has really reconsidered since then. I don't think there is anything in his mind that suggests that this is something that could be cured. He has never been destroyed, never had anybody come close to really seriously destroying him in the time he has been a vampire in Barovia, so I think he's kind of talked himself out of that possibility as well, and no longer considers that actively.
Does he care about not being able to go to other lands and conquer them?
That he does, and we see it a little bit on Yester Hill, where he has this vision that it seems that the mists seemingly conjure for him. He can see his old kingdom that he came from once, where he was born and raised and rose into a general and a prince. He can see it in the mist and knows that he can never return to it. This is, again, I think something he has accepted at this point, because again, with the him becoming a vampire at the same time roughly that Tatiana dies, he feels at that point like that's the critical point in his life where there's no use wishing that could have gone differently. So instead of fighting against the consequences of that, we try to move forward accepting them and using them and gaining power from them, which he perverts into a toxic kind of way. But it's also been 400 years, and he was never a sentimental person to begin with. So it's not like there's something concrete about his old kingdom that he wishes he could physically return to. I think he would acknowledge that it's probably way different than it ever used to be. And actually, if he wants to know what's going on there, he can have the Vistani bring him books and stories and lore. He actually has access to all domains from here. He's able to send them to go wherever they want. He has everything he could ever want here materially. I think that, you know, you could make an argument for, if he could leave Barovia, maybe he could untether himself from his own history, but it's not something he would ever consider. At least not it. The book doesn't suggest that, and I wasn't considering it in my portrayal of him.
Sure. Well, thank you.
Thank you. That was a great question. Any others? We can come back to this later, but...
Not right now, thanks.
All right. So we're heading into a section here where Peregrine has been dropped into Castle Ravenloft. And I know very well that Castle Ravenloft is a very sprawling place, and I don't know how long Duncan might end up here, how long it might be before he even finds a way to escape, whether he will choose to stay and negotiate with Strahd. Like, there could be a lot of content here. In the meantime, I don't want the other players feeling left out, and I don't want Duncan feeling like he's just on his own in this really stressful environment. So I approach everybody else in secret and have them work on something for me, which they do a fantastic job with. And the next time I come together with Duncan, he spends some time exploring his immediate surroundings. He finds that very close to his private chamber in one of the towers of Castle Ravenloft, if he can go upstairs, he finds that there are witches up there toiling away and boiling things in their cauldrons. He meets one named Hagatha, I believe her name is, and she is not immediately aggressive. Peregrine finds it is true that Strahd has warned everybody not to lay a hand on Peregrine while she is here, and this witch is certainly subject to that and far too terrified of Strahd to consider going against it. But a very creepy presence, and as we are having this conversation, everybody else has their temporary characters in the very next room. I have asked everybody, because there's a number of witches on this level, to take one of these witches with their stat block and come up with a name and personality for them, and they can play these witches during Duncan's time, as long as it may be during their encounters with Duncan in Ravenloft. So does everybody remember their names? Could we sound off through the witch personalities and say a little bit about them?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
I don't remember which one was me, but I remember which one was Kayla.
I will agree that I think Kayla and Jax were the most memorable to me. That Kayla's was, in fact, it would appear to be a witch with a black cat familiar, but in actuality, the black cat is the witch, and this horrible old woman is her familiar. And riffing off of Hagatha, the cat is named Pissabel, and Jack's witch is a normal-looking, a fairly attractive young woman named Sarah Jessica Parker.
Sarah what?
Jessica Parker.
Sarah Jessica Parker.
It's just literally just
film
that.
Hocus
It's just her. It's just her from the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did not get to speak a word.
Oh,
Yeah,
I have.
To be fair, this whole
minis
encounter
here.
was pretty brief.
So the others are Crabigale and Stabitha is what I have written here.
Stabitha.
I can't remember if I'm Crabigale or Stabitha.
I think you were Stabitha.
I think I was, because I was jealous of the name Crabigale.
Yeah. That's what happened.
They are waiting in the next room. They're already at the scene. They're all like around their cauldrons and just being nasty old witches. So in another room slightly outside where Peregrine is with this witch, suddenly a form crashes through the window and has swung from a higher level of the castle and splintered through the glass, coming to a sudden stop. This is our first time in Alpha meeting Esmeralda Davenier, and the very first thing that she does is run Hagatha through and kill her just immediately. And then she and Peregrine kick down the door into where all these witches are, and I ask them to please introduce themselves and describe their characters and say a little bit about them. And some of my idea in creating this encounter was, I want to see what happens when Duncan is faced with a situation where he goes, okay, I know that these are all crummy, nasty, gnarly witches, but my friends and fellow players are playing them versus here is this cool but maybe a little intense vampire hunter whom I've just met and is absolutely on a murder war path. How do I handle this situation? So the way that Peregrine handles this situation is she casts Shatter, I believe at 3rd level, on all the witches. And everybody who fails their save is just instantly killed. This... What's up?
I assume if Alan is gone, that Kayla is.
Oh, am I gone?
It could be a computer issue.
Oh no.
Yeah, I hear you.
I can hear you just fine. What? I realize that. I can hear you. I can hear you totally fine. I know. Discord crashed. It's restarting itself.
Peregrine saw this happen. She's like, "Oh my god, these witches need to go down!" And she helped kick down the door and basically lit the place up. Did I use helper? Did I use flamethrower helper? Or did I just use?
That's entirely possible. I think you cast.
Shatter.
I think you cast Shatter. Maybe even at.
You're right. I did do that, and it blew everything the fuck up.
Maybe even at like a higher level. I don't know if you were capable of that
I may
at
have
the
done
time.
the 2nd level. Or
It's a 2nd level spell, so if you had upcast it, it would have been
spell,
3rd
I
level.
don't think I had access to 3rd yet.
Yeah.
So anyway, I started with that, and it blew
Yeah,
everything.
every witch who failed her save immediately died.
Yeah.
One of my favorite spots.
Yeah. And immediately did, and I said, Alan, that Peregrine just doesn't trust dictators, and so did not trust Strahd's word that nothing would come, like none of his minions would hurt her. And I also didn't believe that, or I was prepared for anything to happen. And so as soon as Esmeralda came in and started kicking ass, she decided to follow suit. If Esmeralda hadn't showed up for that scripted part or whatever, I may have considered talking for a bit longer, but I bet she would have read the vibe in the room, decided it was not it, and cast Shatter anyway.
Yeah.
So,
To be fair to myself, I had tried to make it very clear, like, that there would be other things that the party could do also to engage, and it didn't need to all ride on these witches, and that they didn't need to put as much time and thought into their personalities and characters as they did. And so I was very charmed and very horrified that people poured as much love into it as they did, because I already had planned to do this, and people's efforts only made me want to do it even more. So
we have your stream up again yet?
Oh yeah, let me share that. I started the recording, but nope, that's the wrong button. I am recording, but I had not done this. Okay, so we are with Esmeralda for the time being. As the dust settles, we take a moment with her and Peregrine. They make introductions, and Peregrine fills her in on everything that has happened. And when we mention the card readings that have been done prior to this, Esmeralda goes, "That's interesting. I am among the female Vistani who also have this power to tell the future." What's that? You tell me that you drew a card that says, "Reply hazy, ask again later." Why don't we ask again right now? And she performs the card reading again, partly to refresh in everybody's minds, because, man, it's been hard to remember that these cards even exist, much less what they say. And
because they got 2 nulls.
Yeah, it's been tough. And so that we can now have a value for one of those nulls. So this time when we do Strahd's location, we get the artifact, which symbolizes that the fight will take place in the chapel of Ravenloft. Another reason that I've done this is that I had the same problem in both games, where I really wanted parties to, before that end game, with a healthy amount of space before the final act, have the Tome of Strahd so that they understood Strahd better and could have time formulating opinions about him from his backstory. In both games, the Tome of Strahd is in Castle Ravenloft, and I was trying to come up with ways to get the party to get to it before they come to the castle at the very end of the game. So I had a design in having Esmeralda here and in having her want to do this card reading so that she would learn the exact information of what the cards say about these various artifacts, because she immediately goes, okay, this also seems significant to me, and maybe there would be value in us splitting up to explore this castle more thoroughly. Esmeralda is willing to trust a little bit Strahd's assertion that Peregrine won't be harmed, and is also aware, that Peregrine will slow her down if the two of them are going and doing things together. Esmeralda's like fully climbing over the rooftops and things like that. So they are going to cross paths back and forth as they are exploring the castle, but Esmeralda is going to kind of also give Peregrine an anchoring presence for a moment here and be like, you're okay, you can do this, see what you can find, we're in this together to take down Strahd, and then is off again over the rooftops into the night, armed with more information than she had before.
That's awesome.
Duncan, feel free absolutely at any point during this thing to chime in with memories or impressions of this or whatever. Or not.
Sure.
Excuse me.
Briefly, when Esmeralda's like, see what you can find, Peregrine absolutely agrees, but she was like only going to find what she sees on the way out to getting out of here. Because she decides pretty much immediately after meeting with Strahd and he gives his ultimatum in his test, I guess, that she will not meet him again. As fun as the banter is, that she is more interested in getting out alive and also not undead. And she decides that the best way to do anything after this is to be back with her compatriots.
And I think
this whole thing is a big turning point for her to go from I will go home by any means necessary, and if I have to leave or throw any of these other people with me under the bus to get there, turns into I think that we need to do this as a group. And part of that was motivated by wanting to get out of this very intense situation, understanding that it's a wealth of information and she would like to know more out of it. She wanted to get back, and I think that kind of stayed with her for the rest of the campaign too.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it also kind of like a little bit seemed like Strahd was one of the first people that she was never like an insane person, but she would say like weird stuff, and she was very confrontational a lot of times, but in like a, I'm gonna call you out on your bullshit kind of thing. And for me, like when you were doing that with him, it kind of felt like he was like, no. And you were like, oh jeez, oh god.
I think on the other hand, and maybe this is what Strahd was fishing for, and this is certainly how Peregrine would have liked to come across, was that she also was like, saw through a lot of what she considered his bullshit.
Right.
Like this whole game, this whole let's try this out, I give you this ultimatum. She's like, yeah, sure, whatever. Fine, give me more time so I can not play your game. Which, might have been something he was looking for to see if that was the choice she makes, but still, the only way to win is not to play in her mind, and she has seen dictators before. She basically got to witness like a figurehead aristocracy kind of royal situation back home, consolidate power and turn into a huge autocratic situation, and that's one of the reasons she left. So she's seen a variant of this before, and she actually thinks that a lot of his stuff is pretty routine.
Which is, again, none of this is information that anybody in the party or me had any idea was going on in your in your process.
You're right. I mean, I do think, hopefully some of that came across, at least in the form of her being very, like, direct with Strahd in their conversations. And, I mean, she also talked about how, like, he seemed really bored. I think that kind of maybe was a development in our conversations over time anyway, which we've nodded to a bit. But where she's just like, yeah, I already know your deal. Like, we know you want to be with your bride. She's like, honestly, I don't care. And I know where this is going, and I don't like it. Or she thinks she does anyway. But yes, you're right. There's a whole lot of other stuff behind it. I didn't know how to just talk about it without it seeming like I was telling, not showing. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely.
I know this was a long time ago at this point where we made these characters, and most of us probably already learned this lesson, but I hope all of us really cement the lesson learned here of not only should you make backstories for all your characters, you should talk to your DM about them.
Yeah, sure.
At least.
It is true that the more information I have, the more I can try to feed themes into the game. But it's also
frustrated for not.
It is not calling you out because you did more than I did.
I mean, it's also a really cool revelation for me to realize there was all this depth that I had no concept of in your interactions. It's really cool. All right.
Anyway, carry on.
So Peregrine is pretty much immediately looking for a way out of here. And it's pretty clear from the desperate way that she interacts with these witches that she's not here to fuck around and make friends. So it's really too bad that she meets so many friendly people, such as this guy. who pretty immediately introduces himself. This is Escher, and he is a consort of Strahd's, one of the more recent ones, who is still in enough favor with Strahd that he has not been sealed in a crypt in the dungeons, and he would like to keep it that way. He is curious into whether Peregrine is somebody that Strahd intends to keep around, perhaps as another consort, perhaps as competition for Strahd's affections. He has also been ordered not to touch Peregrine and would never dream of doing anything to go against Strahd's wishes or to hurt an innocent person. But if she were to ask questions about the castle and he could give her information that might lead her into somewhere where perhaps she'd end up a little over her head, or maybe if he could just get in really tight with her and make her realize what good friends they are so that he could have leverage over her later if it looked like his own position was in peril, then he will try to get that. I think Peregrine pretty much immediately sniffs out what a snake he is and tries to create some distance between them. Another character that we meet, I'm going to show you art of, and we did not in the campaign actually see art of this character. I think we totally theater of the mind them. For the sake of the slide, I was looking for art, and somebody had some, which I liked enough that I wanted to include here, and it may be different than how you imagined this character. But at some point, while Peregrine is exploring Strahd's kind of leisure rooms, the dining room in particular, there's a great big harp and a lute in a corner there, and she goes and strums them a little bit, and it seems to summon a ghost, and the ghost is of a court jester, of a fool, who introduces himself as Piddlewick. And
my God,
I wish that I'd had this art for this occasion, but Piddlewick seems extremely genial and extremely generous and nice. He's basically saying, yes, once I brightened the halls of this place, which have now been grim for so long, you play my old instrument. You know what? I want you to go ahead and have it. And also, you seem so put upon in this distressing situation here in the dungeon. Is there anything that a ghost could do for you? And they kind of have a back and forth, sort of a friendly thing. I don't actually remember if you ask him for a favor or if he ever makes good on it or accomplishes it. But he does encourage you to take his loot. And that is it turns out to be a magic item that you pick up and carry, and is with the party.
And cannot play well
for the rest of the campaign.
Holds on to it and eventually gives it to somebody else.
We'll be talking more about that later. But we have this friendly.
You look just like Toy Boy.
That was part of the whole thing, right?
It is important that you.
They match?
It is important that you know now that they look very similar to one another. It's not something I don't think I called out in the campaign, but made sense when I saw it in the art. We'll talk about that more.
When he aired his grievances at the end, it had to do with Toy Boy and this whole thing. But I didn't realize that they looked the same, but that makes it even better.
Yeah. It's not explicitly stated by the adventure that they look so similar, but it makes a lot of sense given their relationship.
Yeah, it does.
So, another character we meet is Gertruda, who's a 17-year-old girl who has read all sorts of wonderful mythological stories and decided to come and run away from her tragic home with her crazy mother and visit this great, wonderful castle on a hill and have this Beauty and the Beast experience, which as far as she knows, she's totally having right now. Strahd is such a nice guy. He is just like charming her all the time with his vampire mojo. And he hasn't like abused that or anything. He kind of likes having somebody around who legitimately just wants to talk and learn and hear stories and who respects him as just like an older authority figure. It's something he hasn't had for a while and is totally content to hold on to for as long as possible. But clearly there's a lot of space here for this relationship to become problematic or even tragic. She asks if Peregrine will play a game with her, as she's a little bored, and Peregrine agrees to a game of hide and seek, where as soon as Gertruda closes her eyes and begins to count, Peregrine just peels off through the castle with no intention of returning whatsoever, abandoning this poor girl to her loneliness. Along the way, we see a couple spooky things. We see suits of armor that are filled entirely with swarms of rats, which if you had been in a position to fight them, then perhaps they would have animated the suits of armor to attack you, and then when you destroyed them, rat swarms would have spilled out and swarmed you, but they've been ordered not to hurt you, so they would have absolutely let you pass by. And we also randomly roll, and we roll a random encounter that says you get a random trinket, and then I rolled on a table of 100 items, and the trinket that we rolled was a heavy cloak, which we'll remember later. We wind our way down through this castle and through a long series of unlikely just happening to choose the right rooms. Peregrine finds herself in this chamber. We're kind of skipping to this a little bit. There is a poem in this chamber that lists all of these colors. It has these rocks and everything. Peregrine looks at it pretty hard and determines, okay, I think I want to pick up one of these rocks and throw it into the fire and then run into the fire, and it will teleport me somewhere. She correctly deduces this. She sees that red will lead you to knowledge, and goes, I want knowledge. She takes it, she throws it in the fire. It takes her immediately back to Strahd's library. On the other side of the door, Gertrude is still counting. She has not yet reached 0. So efficiently had Peregrine sprinted downstairs and happened to come to that room. So Peregrine sprints back downstairs directly to that room, but this time something has begun to follow her, because I didn't just have these witches ready for the other players to involve. I also asked each of them to make a character that is a white. These are a random encounter that can be found patrolling Castle Ravenloft, and they are under specific instructions not to harm Peregrine, but they may well try to intimidate or antagonize her or goad her into dangerous situations, or, whatever. Like, I wasn't going to say, you necessarily have to do bad things to Peregrine. If you decide you want to be friends with Peregrine, they could do that. They came up with very specific monstrous personalities. I think Jack, we determined, was stalking her Gollum-like from the shadows. Kayla's was saying really weird things through a door to her. So Peregrine just runs past them as fast as she can and gets back to this room. And at about the same time, because it's become clear now, okay, Duncan has really quickly found a way out of this castle and is resolved to take it. Things escalate a little bit. Esmeralda has been exploring different parts of the castle, but also comes bursting into this room at about the same time, and she is being pursued by somebody very dangerous. Unknown to the party, unknown to Peregrine at this time, this will turn out to be Rahadin, who has discovered her snooping around the castle and is trying to chase her down. They quickly talk through what the brazier is and does, and Esmeralda says, you go to one place, I'll hold off what's coming long enough that you can definitely get away, and they won't be able to chase you because it'll be a little bit of time before the portal closes. Basically, it's not just open for one round, it's open for a little while, so I'll hold them off so they can't hunt you down, and then I'll try to escape myself, but let's go ahead and get you out of here. And Peregrine is ready to take that deal and chooses a stone, throws it in, and launches herself through. We won't see what becomes of Esmeralda for quite some time, but what becomes of Peregrine is that the stone she has selected is one of the ones that leads outside of the castle. There are a number of these. One of them leads to the coffin shop in Vallaki. This was how Strahd and his vampires got in and out without anybody knowing. Another one leads to... it's actually supposed to lead to Krezk. Oh my god. No, I know.
Get him.
You don't have to get me, I know.
He's losing it. You can't hear him.
Can't hear him at all. Don't worry, Discord waits until the exact moment that some crucial changes.
I'm recording on my phone. It's just Discord. Discord is crashing. I've never had this happen before.
I got here like right before this, so I wanted to ask Patrick how he has been.
Setting up a backup computer. Next time this crashes, I'll just switch to that.
That's my. So Kayla's fine.
One of my nice pieces of clothing, buddy. No.
It's not the internet. It's Discord
Discord, huh?
on my computer. Yeah.
Well, that's like what I suggested at the very beginning.
Having a backup.
People were like, if Alan's out, then Kayla's probably out too.
What?
I don't know if that's true.
Oh, he's had choppy Wi-Fi before, but I didn't assume it was.
I
He
use
says that Discord just keeps crashing.
Yeah. It could be because you're streaming and there's a lot of people on the line.
maybe. So it's your fault. I like this idea. All right. Can you see the stream again?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. I think you colored one thing green, and that was the coffin maker shop. That's as far as we heard.
Coffee Maker Shop. There's also an indigo thing over there, which is Kresk. One of the portals goes there. One of them leads to the to Ancient Magic's Womb, which is the Amber Temple in Mount Gakis, which was so the room with the vampire spawn, with the 5 or 6 vampire spawn in crates filled with grave
very
dirt,
bad.
was a room that Peregrine could have found herself in, but the location she selected was the Mountain Spire, which is Selenka Pass. So
Remote.
Peregrine, leaving the dangerous Castle Ravenloft, where everything has been commanded under penalty of death or worse not to hurt her, instead finds herself on a cracked bridge over a 500-foot drop into a misty canyon with frigid wind swirling about her, and hears something behind her and turns and looks as a great shadow descends upon her, and we end the session as a massive form descends upon Peregrine.
Oh no.
She is carried off by the rock to its nest on a cliff face high on the slope of Mount Gakis. It leaves her there for a while as it goes out and continues to hunt, presuming she's not going anywhere, and she is subject to the extreme cold of these conditions. I run Duncan through the mechanics of extreme cold and how you have to do all these constitution saves or take levels of exhaustion. And he says, well, what if I have a really heavy coat like the one that I, in less than a 1 in 100 chance rolled that I would find in Castle Ravenloft? And I said, oh, well then you're going to be probably okay. It's going to really help you out with that and be the reason that you're not super crippled by your experience here. We still spend a fair amount of time just in this nest in freezing conditions, huddled into the corner of it for warmth. We discover that at some point during our adventures through Castle Ravenloft, a severed hand crawled into Peregrine's belongings and now jumps on her, trying to attack her. And this, again, I had considered if Peregrine pulled it off, it would like immediately be like mollified and like make apologetic motions and perhaps be a humorous, horrific companion. So far, instantly fire bolted to smithereens, and we move on forever. And Peregrine does have time during this pause to practice with her lute that she's been given. And what's going on with this lute is that it's a specific magic item that is only supposed to work for bards, which, since no party member in either group is a bard, even without that, I'm like, that's just very restrictive. And Peregrine, while not a musician, is like music related. So I instead introduce a mechanic. Normally the instrument says if anybody but a bard even strums it, they take psychic damage. I said instead, it has all these magical properties, and in order to activate one, you need to hit a DC 15 perform check. If you fail to do it, then nothing happens, which out of combat means you can do it until it happens. In combat, it means it's going to be much more difficult to use. Peregrine, who has detect magic and is therefore able to figure out the properties of this, or attunes to it maybe, is able to figure out what it does, and that it can be used to cast fly on herself. And but is surrounded by whirling winds and frigid conditions, isn't sure, knows that this fly spell would not last a terribly long time, and doesn't know what direction to go in or whether she'd be able to make it all the way there necessarily. Fortunately, as she's beginning to really suffer from the frigid conditions, Alpha has been off in the town of Krezg. They have come here with the Mardikovs to deliver their very late wine shipment at this point. Davian Mardikov is obviously having conflicted feelings toward the party. Like, he's very appreciative of what they've just done for him, but also seems kind of mad at them for some reason, in a way he's not willing to articulate. We're not really sure what's going on with that, or with any of these Mardikovs. Why are they being such sticks in the mud all the time? We are also, I think, like in the middle of a conversation with the Burgomaster and Mistress of Krezg when Luke decides that he's going to cast Sending to Peregrine as Van Richten, and just like tries to check in and be like, hey, what's going on? And Peregrine sends a message to the effect of like, oh, I'm on the mountainside, there's a giant bird, and things are really bad. Things are really, really bad right now. And the party goes, oh shit, this turns out this is not the situation we were expecting, and does sound like something we could immediately intervene in. So they really quickly whip up a plan. They take Van Richten's wagon and beeline back to Van Richten's tower to collect Esmeralda's wagon, because they have a way that they think they could be able to use it if worst comes to worst. With both wagons, they race off into the highlands approaching Mount Gaucus. On the way there, when they're pretty close to Salenka Pass, they come upon an interesting scene. There are two wolves. It looks like I've skipped out again. Can you guys hear me? Okay. All right.
You're cutting in and out, but you're still here.
I am still here. Interesting. Okay. There are two wolves devouring a dead horse. The party chases them off. They inspect the horse. The horse has been killed and eaten by wolves, but was also suffered a traumatic blow from fire instantly before that. That seems to have crippled it. There are human footprints leading away from the horse through the snow. They conjecture that somebody was riding the horse as the wolves chased them, got off the horse, and injured it with fire, crippled it, so that they could leave it behind as a sacrifice to the wolves. But who would do a thing like that? Anyway, we found this corpse of a horse, and as a gesture of respect, Nyx raises it as an undead abomination and names it Cheeseburger, and it will be her companion for the next little bit. We go up and up, and we come to Salenka Pass. Am I out? Switching devices. Switching out.
He's cursed.
Hello.
This is
Your
my
backup computer.
backup computer. I'm gonna have to launch the PowerPoint over here and then control both PowerPoints, the one that's being recorded and the one that you can see. This is a great idea, and everything, all will be well.
That's the spirit.
Yeah. We're going up. We come to Salenka Pass. There's this gatehouse with a green flame curtain across the threshold. We can see, actually, a figure who has been struggling up through the snow to this aperture. They see the party gaining on them from behind and pick up their pace. They cast a spell, seemingly, that dispels the flame momentarily, enough that they are able to run through before the fire appears again behind them.
Wait, where are we seeing this slide now?
I haven't launched it yet. I'm talking ahead of myself.
I see. Gotcha.
Nothing has happened in the slide to communicate to accompany what I've said so far. It is still loading the slideshow. They hustle after this figure because they want to know who that is. Maybe it's the person who just sacrificed their horse, in which case they want to have words with that person. Okay.
Some of us do.
I am choosing the option to begin the slideshow from the current slide. And there we go. And now I'm going to share my screen. And go live. This person is, in fact, Victor Volakovich. He is ahead of them through the flame for now. They give chase, and they come up to the flame, and Action asks, can I see through the flame to the other side, or is it totally opaque? And I say, it's not totally opaque, you can see through. And he says, okay, I misty step through. The headcanon rule that I have to decide on for this, because it's very clear that if you do something that, like, totally circumvents the flame, this will activate the really bad thing that happens. It is a much better choice to walk through the flame when you can. I've already shown that dispelling the flame means you don't trigger this, but I decided that simply misty stepping through it is not enough. So the demons who have been turned to stone and are laying in wait as a defense of this place animate on top of this gate. These are two Vrock demons that instantly come to life and jump into battle with the party. This is two CR6 creatures. I think the party is level 5 at this time, and they have a lot of serious resistances to things, and they like stun you in an area effect, and they do a lot of damage with their claws and bite. So this is not a very fun fight that we're having, and we're down Peregrine still. The party, some of them, call out to Victor, who can be seen running across the bridge ahead of them, getting away from this situation. And they say, we're better off if we can stick together. We should work together on this. They roll well enough. He is convinced to turn over his shoulder and throw back a few magic missiles to help them.
This was a consistent theme of Alpha, is that most, if not all of the party, were like, yeah, fuck that guy, and Action Jack, and like maybe to a lesser extent Rictavio were like, yeah, we could use him. Like, he's like just like a guy. Like, he's not. We don't know anything about him. I have no problem with this.
Look at his face, though.
You should have a problem.
Look at his hateful, haunted face.
The one time that he, I was never subject to his horrible AOE spells, but when he did them, it was like very much in like a self-defense capacity. So I was like,
he's worse. He's worse.
Yeah, he didn't just hit us with his AOE spells. He hit us with his AOE freaking
with extreme prejudice.
Well, but we were also. It was also a situation where, like, a lot of the time, people were like, "You want
certifiable hater."
You want Victor to be your friend, and I'm like, no, I want to use him. He can cast Cone of Cold. If I could get him just to the castle and have him cast one Cone of Cold in a Strahd fight, I don't give a fuck. Like, okay, great, worth it, But it was specifically, I do remember this because I went through the fire and activated the demons, and he was like, looking over his shoulder, and I was like, could you help? Help, please, come on, man. And he was like, okay. Just some magic missiles, I guess. It doesn't really cost me much. I'm like, thank you.
Perhaps satisfied that he has done his good turn for the day, or perhaps satisfied that the party can now occupy the demons long enough that he can certainly escape, he continues to run up the path. He does not linger here. As he exits the scene, everybody is having to figure out their own way through this fire situation. Van Richten uses stone shape to make a hole in the wall, which people are able to follow through. But before that, we test out the fire, like, okay, none of us have gone through the fire. How bad can it possibly be? Hey, Cheeseburger, could you be a deer and go ahead and just take a knock on this for us? So Cheeseburger takes a run through the fire and from full hit points is wholly destroyed, just completely and immediately obliterated by this. We mourn our brief time with the valiant Cheeseburger. The fight eventually ends with the final Vrock at low hit points grabs Van Richten and throws both of them through the flame, hoping to tank it. The Vrock is killed. Van Richten is barely still conscious at the end of that. But something that has happened during this fight is a Vrock has grabbed Action Jack and flown out with him over the canyon and let go of him. Lucian has cast Featherfall on action, so he is falling very slowly, but hundreds of feet down towards mists. They, at this point, I think right before or during this fight, they maybe did another sending to Peregrine, or... No, we haven't got there yet. Something else will get us there. But Peregrine can see from her vantage point something that the rest of the party also sees, which is what they thought was a dark rock outcropping down the length of the canyon, unfurls great black wings, and slowly descends and glides down where Action is falling. And Action is saved from his fall by being collected in the talons of this tremendous rock. That begins directly after this initiative.
Oh my god.
Peregrine is up on the sheer icy face here, but has decided it's been long enough. We're going to try to escape from this. She is able to cast Fly on herself with the loot and begins to descend down the mountain toward the pass. So she is on her way. Questionable whether she will arrive in time to help with anything. But right now, the rock of Mount Gaucus is upon the party, and they're having to jockey with it. They are able to... I think Action is able to cast Freedom of Movement on himself while back over the ground. He escapes the rock somehow and is released from its clutches, such that it is free and looking for prey again. So they carry out a plan, because Peregrine mentioned in the sending reply that there was a giant bird. They didn't know everything to make of that, but they were prepared for a fight, potentially with something massive. And they came up with a plan, and they pull it off step by step here. Nyx uses a scroll of major image that they have. She casts it on Esmeralda's wagon to make it look like an injured and frightened juvenile mammoth. The deception works enough that the rock descends and grasps the wagon in its talons and begins to lift off the ground with it. Lucian, at disadvantage, shoots a firebolt through the window of the wagon, gets more than a 20 on this disadvantage shot, and ignites the alchemist fires within the wagon. The rock is too close to receive a saving throw from the damage. It takes more than 50 points of damage and tumbles stunned down into the canyon, disappearing through the mist. This was the party, I think, at 5th level, fighting a challenge rating 10 creature with more than 200 hit points. And because of this stunt, they simply blow it out of the air. Is it dead? Hard to say, but it doesn't seem to be coming back immediately. And who should be descending down the slopes, flying with a chill wind and music about her, but Peregrine herself rejoins the party at this point. Everybody short rests in the little guard tower directly before the bridge. It's the middle of the day, and we're just short resting here for a brief time. And then they get the fuck out of here. They get in Van Richten's wagon and go back down the mountainsides toward Barovia and as far from here as we can.
Pretty,
absolutely high on adrenaline. Yeah.
This was really something. This was
Yeah, I bet.
This was a fucking session.
Peregrine comes down like Cedric Diggory flying into the World Cup, like, "Hey y'all!" Like, after this happens, it's like, "Wow, big fireball."
I think we also had to work really hard to not be metagaming, because like Peregrine was on her own, and like we had to like be like, because we were watching her and she was watching us, and we had to be like, okay, we have no idea what this fucking like bird is, and so we're probably, it sounds like it just like attacked her, so we're probably gonna get attacked. So we're gonna rig up this like plan for the cart in case this is something that we can't handle. And maybe, and we'll see. And so we planned that, we set it up, and we're like, okay, that's going to be our, like, trump card. And then Duncan, as Peregrine, had to be like, okay, I don't know that they're coming to get me right now. Like we have communicated a little bit that they're probably going to do it. And then, but I don't know where the fuck they are. There's a big mountain. And then she sees the rock take off, and she's like, I I think something might be happening.
Gave it a shot. Yeah.
And then here's
Scorpio.
a massive explosion moments later, and sees the flame going up and goes, those are my friends. that's the direction I want to go.
Found him.
Yeah.
Is this a good time to ask, like, what is the deal with the rock?
The Rock considers this area its hunting domain, and will try to hunt people here. It wants to eat you. It can be enraged. It does have a morale threshold. I think if you take it below 50 hit points, if I'm remembering this correctly, it will just fuck off and not bother you anymore. So it isn't exactly that, like, it will use all of its deadly hit points in trying to eliminate your whole party, but it is going to come in trying to collect at least one creature to take back and eat at some later point. And if you fuck with it enough, because it is territorial, it will try to scatter as many of you as possible into the canyon. Its tactics are to pick people up and drop them, like I was doing. So you guys kind of saw its deal.
Shit you can get in 5e that you never have to worry about in Pathfinder APs. In Pathfinder APs, if there's a monster, you can kill it. In 5e, it's like, who knows? Who knows how powerful this creature is? This thing isn't something you fight; it's something you like deal with. Like it's that's an interesting design.
But because of this encounter, I give Alpha the experience for this location at this point. They will have to come back through here later, but it's not going to be as bad at that later time. And I'm like, yeah, you guys have absolutely earned however this measures towards your next level up. We're going to go ahead and give that to you now for how you've gotten through it. I'm going to stay with Alpha just long enough to sync back up with Prime, because the next place that Prime is, they're both going to end up kind of in the same place at the same time with the same things going on. So Alpha beelines from here to Kresk, where Peregrine has not been before, and they are determined to make a better use of their time here than they did. They go up to this abbey, and much like Prime did, we meet the mongrel folk, we meet the abbot, we meet Vasilka, and he extends to us this deal where he says, I have the ability to raise people from the dead. If you can bring me a wedding dress, then I will use my gift to your benefit 3 times. We think he's pretty weird and pretty creepy in a lot of the same ways that Prime did. We have kind of the same conversations about him. When he is saying goodbye, he takes a moment to address each of them in turn and wish them well. Even though Rictavio is wearing his hat of disguise, he addresses him as Van Richten, which especially has Van Richten shook coming out from that meeting, and they conjecture that he is perhaps something more than human and more than he appears. Something else that has happened that's worth mentioning at this point, I don't remember exactly when this happens. It may still be while we are looking for Peregrine and before we have recovered her, but Van Richten, I think after we recover Peregrine is maybe when this happens. You guys will have to help me with the details of this. I believe Van Richten sends a sending to Esmeralda. I think he has discovered that Esmeralda is in the castle. No, it's not quite that forthright. He casts commune, isn't it? You have a number of questions that you can ask.
Well, I did ask Esmeralda at one point through sending secretly to you.
Yeah.
Hey, what's going on? She basically said, fuck you.
But I remember also that...
And then, commune. I did do commune.
Yes, we cast commune, which is how we directly get into a mechanic that I kind of stretched out a little bit for this campaign because there weren't many divine casters in this group. But we talked about how Nyx's familiar turned out to be a horrible undead thing because magic works differently in Barovia. They give me a lot of specific interactions for things, how things might work. One of them is that any attempt to contact a deity fails, and Strahd can instead choose to intercept it. I chose to stretch this out to cover sendings as well, that Strahd could jump into the airwaves, because people weren't casting any kind of deific prayer spells. It just, I didn't think it was going to happen until Van Richten joined the party, and it did happen exactly this one time and then never again. But here Van Richten casts commune, which is supposed to commune with his deity, the Morning Lord, and asks a number of questions, one of which being something about Esmeralda being in the castle or Peregrine being in the castle. Strahd intercepting this message learns that Peregrine has escaped the castle. And I think also learns that Esmeralda is here.
Yeah,
and we have a delay in the question being answered because Strahd turns into a mist and shoots through the hallways of his castle to determine whether this is true or not. And then, like, the first reply is in Strahd's voice, him saying, like, yes, apparently so. And we discover something pretty horrifying from that as well, which is this ability of his. So Strahd is now aware that Esmeralda is in the castle, and the stakes for her will be raised there. And also he's aware that Peregrine has juked him, and at some point Peregrine, I believe, also receives a sending from Strahd, basically saying, I'm going to follow through on the promise that I made you. Don't forget it. Alpha goes from Kresk to Vallaki. The Mardikovs are now making their wine deliveries, and I'm a couple slides behind over here. We talked to the abbot, and we're back in Vallaki. And the Mardikovs invite Alpha into, like, their back barn to have, like, some kind of serious conversation. And having been brought in there, the doors are closed behind them. And along with the Mardikovs, we can see that the rafters in the upper levels of this barn are filled with swarms of ravens. And it is revealed that the Mardikovs are were-ravens, that they commune with the ravens and together constitute a secret society known as the Keepers of the Feather. They are gathered here to hold a sort of court over Alpha. Many members of the Keepers of the Feather are extremely angry with Alpha's various actions that have caused them to seem super antagonistic and super suspicious, or at the very least, not worth risking this society for. To risk exposure to help these people seems like a really bad idea. Others, like Davian Mardikov in particular, are arguing for the party's effectiveness, that they have redeemed their earlier actions, that the miscommunications were understandable, and that the party deserves to be forgiven and worked with. Alpha are pretty... we hear some pretty angry voices from Alpha about the secrets that have been kept and about having been accused in this way for things that they think are not their fault. But we hear enough regret, and we hear enough of a desire to make things right and work together that they do decide, because I was prepared for this to be a combat encounter. Very much so. That they think that, because they're not just worried about throwing in their lot with you guys, they're worried that if you continue to escalate things in Barovia, Strahd will come and decide to make an example of not just you, but anybody in your vicinity, anybody who has been around you. And there are some parts of them that are considering maybe for the greater good, we should just snuff that threat out here. But we do avoid that. And we do talk through it, and we have gained a staunch ally. Prime, when they come back to Vallaki, we've just allowed Esmeralda to leave the party. We come here, and we are met in similar circumstances by the Mardikovs, who reveal that they are were-ravens and Keepers of the Feather, and go, you guys are great. Just have absolutely been absolutely killing it this whole time. Top marks. We couldn't possibly know that you have a card that predicted this, but we have decided to imbue you with our greatest treasure, a weapon against Strahd that we have never dared to offer to another party in the centuries that we have kept it secret and safe. This is a sword of sunlight, which we pass into your keeping. And Prime goes, nice.
Man, did we not know what a nest of ravens was going to be, and then, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Oh, wow.
How about that? You guys were a secret society of what now? That's crazy. We just thought you were super nice people.
You guys get your son's sword. I don't want no handouts. I gotta work for my son's sword. We gotta.
Oh, and how we work.
We gotta go to hell and back to get our son's sword.
You'll find out.
Mm-hmm. So the sun sword is best.
Get it handed to you by
Does it come with like a year of free car washes or
You
something?
need to
Like,
do a better job drawing cards, is what I'm hearing.
yeah, clearly.
If it makes you feel any better, the Sun Sword is best leveraged by a dexterity-based melee character, a build that does not exist in Prime. So Shava, the squishy warlock who has the highest dexterity, ends up being the wielder of it.
Amazing. Both warlocks. Okay, cool.
It's it's a huge relative increase in her melee damage capabilities, and I think it was wielded to pretty solid effect in the time to come.
She wouldn't have been proficient with it, would she?
Oh, she's an elf.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that special?
Yeah, I think that might have been what eked her out over Tox taking it. It was very close, deciding which one of them would be its bearer, which Lamau. So
yeah, it was a little redundant on Cinder because Cinder can already do radiant damage.
Yeah, and that was part of it too. Is that the main melee people already had magic weapons, so it wouldn't have been as significant a relative increase in their damage output to wield this sword instead. Prime spends a little bit of time settling in here, getting back into their Burgomaster's mansion where they are. They have a couple of seemingly unrelated character interactions during this time, or little moments that occur. One of them is that the new Burgomaster, Lady Fiona Voctor, approaches them and is like, "Hey, so you're back from your adventures in the Hill Trillins, please. Just, I would love to know, what you got up to, where you went, and what you did. That would just be good information for, the leader of the town to have, if you wanted to tell me that. And also, when were you thinking of leaving next, and where were you thinking of going?" And the party tell her, "Well, we're thinking about maybe going to Argynvostholt." And she's like, "Oh, how long do you think that might take?" And they're like, "Maybe like a day. We're not really sure. Maybe like a day." She's like, "Okay." And like, when do you think? And they're like, "Maybe tomorrow. We don't know." And she's like, "Okay, just asking questions. Just keeping tabs. Anything you need? Anything I can do for you? No? Well, you're always welcome back to dinner anytime. We'll be waiting for you." And another thing that happens.
Loving this. This is amazing.
They have Irina Kolyana.
Sounds fake and made up. I don't believe it exists.
The party has Irina Kolyana hidden away in the Burgomaster's mansion. She is staying in Victor's old bedroom that he never really used because he was up in his workshop most of the time. Yeah, he had a bedroom on the second floor that he didn't sleep in. So it maybe wasn't really obviously his. But while she is staying in there, somebody happens to notice that there is a raven at her windowsill that seems to be peeking in. And we have just met these were-ravens and learned all of this, and this raven, like, being here, and when it is noticed, it flies away, seems to clash somewhat with the characterization of the ravens that we have just received from the Keepers of the Feather. So we follow up with them and ask them, like, "Hey, was this one of your people keeping tabs on our people?" And they say, "We'll look into it." And the party goes, "Okay, I think we can trust you. Just at this point, we're going to kind of let you know about Irina and her whole situation that's going on here. And while we were out of Vallaki, could you be keeping tabs on her, maybe, please?" And the Keepers of the Feather go, "Yeah, we will do that." The party rests for the night, and as they're making preparations to leave in the morning, the Markovs do come to them and say, "So we did ask around, and we do not know who that raven was. Whatever it was."
What happened in the morning?
He's back.
Oh my god. Am I back? Hello?
Yeah, morning. Yes.
All right. Okay. This is backup computer, so it better be okay. In the morning, they are approached by the Markovs who say, "We did look into it. That raven was not one of ours. We do not know what that raven was doing there. But, move with caution. We'll see if we can find out more about it." Do you guys remember when we talked about Alpha, how we discovered that Lady Fiona Voctor has an imp familiar? Imps can transform into a number of small animals, including ravens. And in a town that is flush with ravens, it is very easy, one might think, to move unnoticed amongst them, because ravens land on windowsills to look inside curiously all the time. Why would anybody make a special note of that? And how could they possibly know whether it was a good raven or a bad, mysterious raven? We're just going to keep that in mind.
Yeah, see, that's why Alpha didn't trust these ravens in the beginning.
Lucian was
because they
right the whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
They're all
Mhm.
spies.
I thought it was ambiguous.
The Warcaws who were so mad at us for being like, ravens, we don't trust you, but we're like, you're just fucking ravens. Like, we don't know what you... Are you servants of Strahd, perhaps? So fuck you.
Meanwhile, Prime has stumbled into the only bad raven. Well, that's named after his mother, Queen Ravenovia, totally unrelated to ravens in any way.
It's called Ravenloft. Presumably all the ravens live in the castle because it's the loft of the ravens.
Absolutely zero ravens live in Castle Ravenloft. They will nest outside of it to keep tabs on it.
That later.
Yeah.
False advertisement is honestly just the worst.
Yeah, it's actually just a big psyop by Strahd to fuck with people.
Prime goes out on a little adventure. They go out west of town. They go up a spur trail that is not marked in any way, and after winding uphill through the woods, they find themselves in front of an old, ruined mansion. It is entirely collapsed on one side. It looks like they could just walk in. There is a great statue of a stone dragon in front. This is certainly what has been referenced in one of their cards that refers to this statue. We make a foray into it. We fight some giant spiders and some other things. After short resting, while still within the mansion, we view a peculiar scene that happens outside. A Vistani drives a cart up the road and stops in front of the mansion. He is whistling, clearly at ease. He unloads a coffin from his cart, puts it on the ground, gets back in his cart, and drives back down the trail into the woods and out of sight. The party decides to investigate, as one would. They approach the coffin and discover there is a single name carved onto the lid. It says Talks. They open the coffin, and a single swarm of bats flies out and targets Talks. We roll initiative. The swarm does its utmost to damage Talks as much as it can every round until it is utterly destroyed. I think the interaction that happened next, if I recall this correctly, is Sparky goes something like, "That was weird. Anyway, what's in the coffin?" And I say something to the effect of, "Well, not bats anymore." There is nothing else in the coffin. So, left without any recourse, we move on from that. We go back into Argynvostholt and press forward. This is a scripted event that happens in the book that we have resolved. In Argynvostholt...
Is that the event, like, when you rest at Argynvostholt, or just, like...
Just at any point while you are there, this might happen.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, now Jack comes back. He left immediately before this and returned immediately afterward. Moving on. What we discover in Argynvostholt, is that this was once a stronghold of pride and tradition. There are dragon motifs all over this place. There are military trappings. We discover knights in an old chapel still kneeling at the altar, dressed in their armor, but they are beyond life and they are beyond sanity at this point. These are the revenants of the Order of the Silver Dragon. We will discover eventually that this was a order of paladins who once dwelt in this valley, led by their liege commander, Lord Argynvost. When Strahd became a vampire, they opposed him, and he led his forces against them and wiped them out to the last man. Ew, indeed. They linger in their mansion, in their former stronghold, revenants to Strahd. They count him as their murderer, but they know that they are unable to defeat him. So they have been driven mad by the centuries of frustration and torment. Any creature who arrives here, they regard as an ally of Strahd, come to finish them off, and they will relive their last stand against whatever appears before them. This is true for all of them except for one. One of them they discover, has been able to maintain his sanity, and when his companions attack the party, he intercedes on their behalf. This is Sir Godfrey Gwillem, the last sane Revenant Knight of Argynvostholt in the Order of the Silver Dragon. Faced with his nobility and his composure, the party tells him, we drew a card that said we were fated to meet an ally, a member of an Order of Silver Knights who would help us against Strahd. He says, that's wonderful. That card must mean my Lord Commander, Vladimir Horngard. I will take you to him at once. We go to visit Lord Horngard, who sits in his ruined throne, in his ruined throne room, grimly clutching his enormous greatsword. And the party asks him for help, and he asks after their purpose. He says, I believe that for his many crimes, including the destruction of my order, Strahd deserves nothing less than eternal punishment. The suffering that he currently endures through his cursed existence in Barovia is that punishment. Anyone who seeks Strahd's release or his destruction will find themselves opposed in their effort by me to the best of my ability. It is written in the book that he immediately attacks them upon saying this, believing that they are going to try to destroy Strahd. They talk so earnestly and so aggressively and so emphatically and sincerely, and they show him such respect, and they back off away from him, that no fight occurs here. He does not summon his many phantom warriors to join him in battle at this time, but is instead left to linger in his throne room. They know that they have other business that they need to accomplish here, which is that they have 2 cards in Argynvostholt. One of them has led them to a champion, perhaps Vladimir Horngard. Another one leads them on still to the highest spire, a tower at the back of the mansion. They know that they must climb to its highest summit. They gain the roof, twisting upward through this haunted building. Skipping a lot of content in it, by the way. This is like fully a dungeon where there's all kinds of weird, crazy bullshit in every room. And honestly, you guys, I think, did fine. Just like skipping through, like, because you really kept on the dour theme this way. I think we would have got distracted by other stuff if we had gone through it. But something that we didn't really encounter too much of as a result is the specter of a sort of the shadow of a dragon that haunts this place. You would in many rooms see what seemed to be a vision of a dragon muttering or voicing its sorrow in this place. We make it to the roof, and here we encounter phantom warriors engaged in defense of this place, shooting down from arrow slits, revenants atop the roof within the tower, and climbing up from the levels below, converge upon the party, realizing that they seek to gain its highest summit, and realizing that the party is headed for the treasure he knows is at the top of the tower. Sir Vladimir Horngard convinces himself, yes, they seek to use this weapon to destroy Strahd. I cannot allow this. And he rises in pursuit of them. Him on his own is a threat for the whole party to face. With his revenants and his phantom warriors, it is a dangerous encounter indeed, but Sir Godfrey Gwillem takes up arms reluctantly. Though it breaks his heart to do so, he defends them against his commander, Vladimir Horngard. And together, and with Tox casting lightning lure over and over to pull revenants into the inside of a tower such that they fall all the way down into the bottom of the chapel. At one point, I think I do throw... Yeah, okay. At one point, I throw Shava down there.
Oh yeah, I get thrown off that cliff.
And when you impact on the ground, you instantly, as your reaction, Misty Step back up to the second level or something like that.
Invisible, and so they look down and I'm just not there.
Yeah, and we have a whole lot of danger of falling down the inside of this tower, but we eventually struggle up to its highest peak, and here we find the holy symbol of Ravenkind, which requires a cleric or a paladin to attune to it. But given the experience he has just had, Sir Godfrey Gwillem accepts though he's loath to do so, that Vladimir Horngard is perhaps not the fated companion. He had hoped that the party would restore him to his senses and he would see his commander at his full glory once again. But in absence of that, Sir Godfrey Gwillem will accompany them, and he will attune to the holy symbol of Ravenkind to wield it in battle at their side. Godfrey does not have levels in a traditional sense. He is very much a 5th edition NPC in that regard, but he does cast spells as a 16th level paladin.
Oh, wow. What the fuck?
I didn't know that.
And his sword just does 2d10 damage, plus his strength modifier.
Oh my god.
Needless to say,
Regeneration.
he regenerates from anything that isn't fire or radiant damage. He has over 100 hit points.
Oh my god.
The Prime doesn't know it, but the campaign is over at this point.
Yeah, this is the second time that there's been a potential fated companion person. They're like, yeah, they have over 100 hit points. I'm like,
Yeah.
all right. I still don't know how many Van Richten had.
I'll never tell you.
Yeah, fuck you.
I think
Sorry,
Van
but, like,
Richten has like 72 hit points.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's pretty close.
No, that's close.
A reasonable amount.
Prime returns to Vallaki with their companion. They are smuggling him inside a cart because they don't think that the townspeople would react well to seeing him. This is the reason ultimately why I didn't want Christy playing Sir Godfrey, even though it would have made a lot of sense for her to fall into this role. They head back to Vallaki. So I'm going to say another thing about Strahd here, which is that one of Strahd's greatest powers is that he's just powerful enough to make it seem like he is all-powerful, and just knowing enough to make it seem like he is all-knowing. But in fact, I do have specific guidelines for how he acquires his information. He has a vast spy network across Barovia. He has command of certain beasts. Specifically, it's the kind of things that can be summoned by his Children of the Night ability. This includes the wolves of Barovia, who can report information to him. It includes the bats of Barovia. So these two cover a lot of ground between them. If you are like out in the Swallish Woods or on the roads at any time, I can kind of reasonably assume that some critter somewhere sees you at some point and can relate a general idea of where you are and what you are doing. It is also true that the Vistani work for Strahd. Not all of them, but enough of them that in pretty much every encampment there is a Vistani who is willing to, for a payment of coin, relate what he has seen of the party to Strahd. Not necessarily like all your weaknesses and everything, and they're not going to really try to ingratiate themselves with you and put themselves at risk, but they feel pretty removed from the situation ethically just to like report on, yeah, these travelers came through and here's kind of what they looked like and here's kind of what their deal was. So
We already knew that the Vistani worked for Strahd. So.
yeah, of course, Alpha has been made aware of this.
With the animals, is that like supposed to be some sort of like telepathic kind of like messaging system that they have?
They don't really give a mechanical definition for that, which I think is wise, because I think if they were like saying he could use Find Familiar through them, then that would lend itself to all kinds of things where like, what if Strahd was watching them right now? They just kind of generally like these animals are his eyes and ears. And I took that to vaguely mean like, okay, if you spend time in these areas of the map, Strahd will eventually learn the vague silhouette of what you accomplished while you were there. It may not happen immediately.
Right. When you say like spend time and like eventually like what kind of like I know you probably didn't have like an exact hour to hour timer, but like what was the general like time frame?
If it was close to Castle Ravenloft, maybe like a day, and if you were farther out, maybe like a couple of days. It might depend on how actively Strahd was interested in what you were doing at the time. Yeah,
I believe that.
Mm-hmm. Another source of information for Strahd is Barovians. He has spies among the Barovians in every town. These are people who are isolated from the community, often those who do not have souls, who are willing to, exchange favors of some sort in exchange for information. Among the less reclusive of these, among the more social and more ambitious, is Lady Fiona Voctor, who Strahd does not respect particularly. He doesn't hold her in high esteem, but he has had a relationship with her family for a long time. There is an open avenue of communication, and he will accept information that comes from her. He believes that she is trying to raise herself in his esteem, and that information that comes from her is worth investigating. So when the party in Prime leaves for Argynvostold, and Lady Fiona Voctor knows that they are hiding a woman in their mansion who clearly they don't want people to know about because her imp familiar has spied her in there. She has specifically gone and tried to give them an opportunity to volunteer information about Irina, and the fact that the party didn't do so or was close to their chest about it makes her think this is a situation of value. She doesn't know anything else about it, but she makes sure to pass this information down the line to Strahd that the party will be out of town for a day, perhaps less, perhaps more, and there's this woman in this house, and maybe he'd like to know something about that, and maybe it's worth enough to him to be remembered later on. Strahd does receive this information, and he does act on it immediately. And he has no intention of ever giving Lady Fiona Voctor any credit for bringing it his way. Alpha has returned to Vallaki at this point, and while they are spending the night, they are reminded that the last vestiges of Strahd's information network are still in effect in Vallaki in their campaign as well. They are aware that there were more cultists in Lady Voctor's group than they ultimately fought in their showdown. And it was during a night where Nyx leaves the rest of the party to go have a slumber party with the other children, the ones that were rescued from the windmill. She's spending time with them in their bedroom. She gets up to make herself a snack in the middle of the night. She goes into the kitchen and spies these men sneaking into the back of the burgomaster's mansion with daggers. And their plan, not knowing the party is here, is to find Ismark, murder him, and kidnap Irina. Nyx solos these cultists long enough to raise the alarm. She's invisibly misty stepping around them and doing bullshit to them. They are casting inflict wounds and hold person and trying to lock people down. Ismark does immediately, when the alarm is raised, burst without his armor from his room and rush into the fray with his swords. Irina also responds and draws steel and fights them. They are the ones on the forefront of this encounter because other members of the party are specifically sleeping farther away from this entrance, but we're eventually able to chase these men out and chase them down across town. With this, we eliminate the last of Strahd's spy network in Vallaki in the Alpha campaign. They are not able to 100% return to Strahd with information about Irina's whereabouts. They were hoping, given their failure with Lady Voctor, to present Irina to him because they saw her at the Festival of the Blazing Sun. They were hoping to deliver her as a prize, so they have not told him about her ahead of time. So in the Alpha campaign, Strahd has exhausted every avenue of uncovering Irina's whereabouts through subterfuge, which means that his next effort to get at her is going to be a little bit more dramatic. In Prime, he has already now determined where Irina is, and he plans to act on it immediately. Prime returns. Actually, it doesn't take them that long to return to Vallaki from Argynvostold, not nearly as long as they might have thought. They come in with Sir Godfrey, and they come to the Burgomaster's mansion, and somebody is laying in wait there in stealth for them and calls out to them and whispers out to them. It is Erigal of the Vistani. And he tells them that that Arabelle wants to see them, and they have to leave town with him and go to the Vistani camp immediately. He is being obviously extremely suspicious. The party really doesn't trust him. They really try to shake more information out of him, but makes it clear he is absolutely unwilling to say more than he already has said. Given the choice between not following him and following him, they decide they will follow him. They go south of town, and as they are about to pass into the tree line toward the Vistani camp, they succeed a perception check to hear the alarm being raised in town behind them. Erigal's Vistani were the method that Lady Voctor used to deliver her message to Strahd. He knows that this is when, because communications have since gone back and forth, they have said, prepare, Strahd is coming to Vallaki today to do something in regards to the PCs. Aragorn still feels a debt to Prime for saving his niece. She has asked that he come to Vallaki and try to get them out of town before the hammer falls. And he has delivered on this. He's gotten them outside the town walls, but he has failed to get them away from town before they can realize that Vallaki is under attack. They see a column of smoke come up from just within the north gate, and they can see, even at this distance, that packs of werewolves are running through the streets and cutting off toward the western and eastern gates to come into the town from every direction, presumably to meet up somewhere in the middle. They abandon Aragorn and rush to intervene. They decide, given their options, they could go back immediately into town and like go up straight north or go to the Burgomaster's mansion or whatever. They decide to go to the west and intercept the forces that are going to hit the gate there. They have a short encounter. There's just a few werewolves there that they cut down, and then they run into town to discover that the rest of the werewolves are all converging on one location, the Burgomaster's mansion, where Irina and Ismark are. The party could have had more time to prepare for their arrival there if they had guessed that's where the werewolves were arriving and had gone straight there. But because we went here first, we will have to deal with fewer werewolves in this fight, where the entire pack of werewolves has descended on this location. They are led by Kirill Stoyanovich, who is blustering through the streets high on his power. The werewolves are immune to the non-silver weapons of the Vallaki. He is feeling on top of the world when Prime runs him over with their cart at full speed.
Amazing.
Tox begins fireballing all of the werewolves. Godfrey steps out of the cart, casts magic weapon as a bonus action, and begins smiting into the werewolves. They're cutting through them.
Sounds nice.
It's extremely nice. But they realize that they are still just a little farther away than they would like to be from the entrance to the manor, where Ismark is holding the door against the werewolves as best he can, but also where Strahd has arrived astride Bucephalus. He dismounts and begins to use legendary actions to force his way into the mansion. Ismark does his best to stand against the werewolves, stand against Strahd, but he is pretty quickly bowled over and is in grave threat of being torn apart by the werewolves. It seems like Strahd is going to reach Irina unopposed, except we have one member of the party who has mobility way above the others. As Strahd is coming down the hallway toward Irina, Shava manages to appear between the two of them and pulls out the newly acquired sun sword to stand against him. This is Strahd's first time seeing the sun sword in over 400 years, and he is extremely impressed by Shava standing against him like this. So rather than take her down, he requires her to do a will save against his charming presence.
What's unfortunate about all of this is I'm a level from being completely resistant, like completely immune to charm effects.
Oh, wow.
By the time we face him the second time, I am just completely unable to be charmed. I'm like, ah!
Shava fails this saving throw. And Strahd asks her, where did you get that? And she agonizes for a while over how best to answer, but given the fact that she is charmed, still trying not to say more than she absolutely has to, she does answer something to the effect of, the were-ravens gave it to me. Strahd wants everybody to think that he is all-knowing. But this is the first time in 4 centuries that it has occurred to him that there might be were-ravens in Barovia, a concept that is absolutely alien to him, and he is absolutely floored by. He puts that on a shelf to deal with later, and he will deal with it later. But for now, he tells Shava to stand aside. He takes Irina and charms her, and she is forced to climb on the back of Bucephalus with him. Before she does, Dr. Flint, who is still fighting outside below her window, hears a conversation that passes between them where Irina is like asking Strahd like why he's doing all of this. And in trying to placate her and encourage her to come with him, Strahd says something to the effect of, "You are part of a legacy that you have not yet begun to understand." We aren't sure exactly what to make of that at this time, but with Irina aboard Bucephalus, Bucephalus enters the ethereal plane with his riders and is gone. The werewolves are entirely annihilated in this fight. By design, I brought all of them here so that Prime would at no point have to go to the werewolf camp. They receive all of that experience for this fight.
Nice.
And that's a location that is now entirely redundant, which does mean there are some...
Something you were trying to avoid?
Because Prime, at this point, we're just trying to save some time. We're not meeting all the time, where people are absent a lot, and it becomes clear, like, we're not going to want to 100% this map. There are extra storyline things that we don't get if we don't get to the werewolf camp, but we'll hear about them from Alpha. And the important thing is that we get to run over Kirill Stoyanovich with a cart, so everything comes out. Okay. He does not... The cart was unfortunately not silver, so he took no damage from that, but it was satisfying, I imagine. Was there a question?
I will point out that at this point, Dr. Flint, having heard that, started to suspect that Irina might be Strahd's daughter. Or, like, descendant or something. Since we had not known anything about Tatiana yet.
I hate that. There was also the info that she had been adopted.
Yeah, that was the thing. It's just she was adopted. Yeah.
Did you surprise Pikachu Face when there was a wedding to his daughter? Or by that point, had you figured it out?
I think we had disavowed ourselves of this theory by that point.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. What is my next?
Personally, I thought that would be a way more compelling twist that she was his daughter. But the Tatiana storyline.
And if I'm being honest, there was a moment where I like considered how much work I would have to do for that to be like a Prime specific storyline that I introduced, and I rejected it pretty quickly. But I was like, oh man, what if? There was also one of those I spoiled for Alpha already. There was another one of those for Alpha where somebody offhandedly, and apparently didn't remember it later, were like, Irina and Ismark are like kind of weirdly close. There's not like something weird going on there, is there? I was like, ooh man, that would be really great. I would have loved that. Oh well. What a twist that would have been. Speaking of
maybe their soul their souls could have been from people that were like romantically involved.
Specifically, I was thinking, what if Sergei's soul was reincarnated into Ismark? What if he had the absolute friend zone misfortune to be reincarnated into this relationship with her and didn't know how to handle that? Was not aware of it, as Ismark without Sergei's memories. So, trying to get over that. So,
would have been funny.
In another story, maybe we'll have something like that. If I have time, there's another quick section I would love to push through to reach a really good stopping point. If nobody really needs to kick off right now, I would really love to push through this and get through it. Alpha has come to Vallaki, and they have gathered this wedding dress that the abbot has asked them for, and they're prepared to return immediately to Kresk with it. Unaware that by slaying the last of Lady Factor's spies, they have convinced Strahd that if he wants to advance things with Irina, he's going to have to take a more direct role. As they are approaching Kresk, they can see a column of smoke rising from it. They immediately beat a hasty path there. They rush in through the gates, which are held open for them by guards atop the walls, and then those same guards immediately slam the town gates shut. They find that various belongings of the villagers have been gathered in the town square by Strahd, who has laid an ambush for the PCs, hoping that they would rush in exactly like they did. He is here with not all of the werewolves like Prime faced, but with a great number of them. And They are surrounding the PCs on Van Richten's cart, and he gives them the ultimatum, tell me where Irina is, or I will begin to kill you one by one. The party chooses to fight, and they have a secret weapon that Strahd is unaware of. They crack open the back of Rictavio's wagon, and having been caged in here for so long with its bloodthirst, the armored saber-toothed tiger Hot Dog is absolutely itching for a fight.
Hot dog.
They,
Can I add something real quick,
Mhm.
Alan?
Yeah.
I think a werewolf tried to open it, and we said, "Oh, don't open it! Oh, don't open it!"
Oh no, please.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds right. Strahd uses his legendary actions, and he moves up to Hot Dog and sinks blow after blow into him, both on his turn and not on his turn. Hot Dog is a very tough creature, and in one round, he is reduced to very few hit points. And when it is his first turn after blasting out of the wagon, he simply tucks his tail between his legs and runs away. The party does what it can to stand against Strahd, something that is happening during this fight, unbeknownst to them. And we don't even find out about this until the recap, actually. One of these werewolves is this woman, Zuleika Toranescu. She does not want harm to come to children. She does not want harm to come to Nyx specifically. She has enlisted the aid of one other werewolf. All that they are trying to do this entire fight is run up to Nyx and grapple her and drag her safely away from combat. Something that Nyx never discovers, because every time she is grappled, she misty steps out of it to a rooftop and firebolts, usually the werewolf who just grappled her. So Zuleika in particular is getting her ass absolutely lit up trying to get Nyx out of this fight. She eventually has to abandon this and flee because she is so badly damaged. She does escape the fight. Another thing that is happening...
I'm sorry, but I was being grabbed in the middle of a fight by a werewolf.
Absolutely. Listen, it would not have been good for Nyx or for the party to have been separated from the group here. Like, it was a way of ensuring that you weren't going to come to harm in this fight, but it would have, you wouldn't have been there to help your party and something bad could have happened. So you absolutely did the right thing, sticking your guns on this. Strahd is focused on something else during this fight. He has made a promise to Peregrine that if she was not willing to accept his proposal, she didn't even meet with him at midnight, he had promised that he would kill a member of her party. And like Harvey Dent at the end of The Dark Knight, he's pointing a gun at various members of the Commissioner's family and seeing who he gets the best reaction from Peregrine when he threatens that person. So he is goading her the whole time and reminding her of his promise and trying to fish for this information about Irina, while also saying, it is too late, I am going to kill one of your party members. The loser of this, the person who Peregrine happens to react the strongest when this person is threatened, is Lucian, who is standing next to Peregrine at the time. Strahd grabs Lucian and uses every legendary action to simply deal damage to him, to simply hit him for damage. Lucian goes unconscious, and Strahd continues to throttle the life out of him, causing him to fail 2 death saving throws with every strike until he snaps his neck and drops him to the ground. At this point, Action raises his voice and says, Irina is in the Burgomaster's mansion in Vallaki. Strahd immediately backs off from the fight, leaving the werewolves to whatever happens to them, and mounts Bucephalus and scatters off into the ethereal plane. He will ride immediately to Vallaki to try to find Irina. But what he doesn't know is that in, I think, the first round of combat, Van Richten cast the spell Sending, contacting. He's in his disguise right now as Rictavio, so we're not sure whether Strahd knows this is Van Richten or not, and I hadn't made a decision about it because I don't think it was a sexy enough time to relate that. I don't remember anyway if it was coming up. Maybe it was.
True.
But Rictavio has contacted Erwin Mardikov and said, get Irina to safety. There's this woman in the Burgomaster's mansion named Irina, and get her to safety now. Strahd is coming for her. And Erwin Mardikov is already throwing a plan into motion. Strahd will not get there in time before it comes to fruition. But as he is leaving, as he is in the ethereal plane about to ride away, he looks and casually takes note of a new ghost standing over Lucian's body and welcomes him properly to Barovia. That is where we're going to stop for tonight, I think.
A lot of ground.
We
Well done,
hit a good
It was
pace.
really nice seeing all the DLC you guys got over the...
Yeah, what the heck, man?
And we didn't even fully explore it ourselves.
Sure, yeah. It's amazing.
Dude, one time we opened a curtain or something, and there was
Ismark's head.
Ismark's head, like severed head. And we're like, whoa, no! And then we closed the curtain, opened it again, and it was gone. We're like, it's just Barovia being funky.
This place is just haunted as shit.
Between that and the coffin full of bats with Tox's name on it, and seeing shapes in the mist, and seeing other weird things like visions of yourselves being hanged. Another thing that happens somewhere in here, which may have been forgotten, is that Dr. Flint finds something on the road. He finds a drawing that he drew as a child of his imaginary friend.
I did not remember that at all.
I didn't think you kind of went, at the time and moved on, but the pattern that connects all of these seemingly nonsensical events is that it seems that there is some sentient force within Barovia that is constantly seeking to play little pranks on the characters, as if for its own all-knowing amusement.
That's fair.
I feel it. I don't remember us having a lot of those.
I mean, well, that's the thing. How many things were had to do with our past?
In your game, you guys were the pranksters.
That is true.
There was a bit of that.
We were a bunch of assholes, and then one time Strahd was like, all right, I've had enough of your shit. Lucian's dead. We're like, okay, we're sorry. Irina's in the Burgomaster's mansion. We're sorry. We were just messing, man.
Amazing.
I
guess another prank of ours.
Yeah, you took it too far, Strahd.
Yeah.